day, everyone. My name is Annette Johns, and I'm the Associate Director of Policy and Practice with the Newfoundland and Labrador College of Social Workers. We are celebrating the last week of National Social Work Month. Can't believe it. This year's theme, 7 Points of Unity, Many Possibilities, celebrates the release of the 2024 CASW Code of Ethics. This new code contains 7 values that guide ethical, inclusive, and empowering social work practice. In celebration of Social Work Month, I'm happy to be the moderator for today's education webinar, Enhancing Social Work Practice Through Reflection and Creative Expression. I do want to note that CASW is giving away merch to 2 attendees from each of their National Social Work Month webinars. For your chance to win a free CASW notebook and tote bag, please be sure to fill out the survey at the end of the webinar and let us know how you think social work offers possibilities. Today's webinar will be about 90 minutes, which will include a question and answer period. During the presentation, I encourage you to type in your questions using the question mark icon at any time throughout the presentation, and I'll begin asking them at the end of the presentation. So I now want to introduce our speakers, Kim Kelly and Nikki Brown. Kim is a registered social worker who has practiced in the area of education for 21 years with expertise in areas of resident life career development, experiential and community service learning, and student leadership and success. She provides postvention services and co-leads activities to support survivors of suicide loss. Kim's current practice interests include grief and loss and spirituality. Kim is a volunteer board member with the RUA Counseling Center here in St. John's, member of the NLCSW Promotion of the Profession Committee, and the recipient of the 2024 CASW Distinguished Service Award for Newfoundland and Labrador. Nikki is also a registered social worker and a Master of Social Work student in her final semester. Nikki is currently employed at Memorial University and has worked in several community organizations in St. John's, Newfoundland, Labrador. There, Nikki prioritized developing low barrier and harm reduction approaches. Her experience includes coordinating supportive housing, work, program development, and she also volunteers with the NLCSW Editorial Committee and SHOP, which is a sex worker advocacy program. Nikki is passionate about social work education and critical anti-oppressive work. Kim and Nikki, I'm really looking forward to your presentation today, and I'll now turn the virtual podium over to you both.
Thank you so much, Annette. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. So in alignment with the CASW's newest value of truth and reconciliation, we've chosen to use a land acknowledgement from First Light, which is a nonprofit group based here in St. John's, Newfoundland of Newfoundland and Labrador. They do a lot of important work. I'd encourage you to check them out. So we respectfully acknowledge the land on which our community gathers as the ancestral homelands of the Beothuk, whose culture has now been lost forever. We acknowledge the island of Uktuhamgook as the unceded traditional territory of the Beothuk and the Mi'kmaq people. We acknowledge Labrador as the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Innu of Nitassinan, the Inuit of Nunatsiavut, and the Inuit of Nunatukavut. We recognize all First Peoples who were here before us, those who live with us now, and the 7 generations to come. As First Peoples have done since time immemorial, we strive to be responsible stewards of the land and to respect the cultures, ceremonies, and traditions of all who call it home. As we open our hearts and minds to the past, we commit ourselves to working in a spirit of truth and reconciliation to make a better future for all.
Thank you, Nikki. So we're so delighted that you could join us today. And of course, the topic of our webinar is enhancing social work practice through reflection and creative expression. And so, of course, my name is Kim Kelly, and Annette did that great introduction. Thank you, Annette. And I will add a few things about myself that, I didn't share with Annette, but Annette may know about me for sure. But the first thing to know about me is I am the daughter of Bill and Sheila, and I'm from Cape Royal on the Southern Shore, which is the Irish shore, the Irish Southern Shore in Newfoundland and Labrador, and I proudly celebrate my Irish heritage. And Also, my spiritual life, I'm a proud member, proud presentation associate, where the foundress of that congregation worked for social justice. So I love to carry on the work of Nano in my everyday life, and I'm proud to do that. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me, and I'm a seasonal decorator. Decorate for all seasons, both myself and my house. So over to you, Nikki.
Thank you, Kim. And I've had the pleasure of working with Kim for a couple of years now and known her for much longer. And my name's Nikki Brown. And so I'm happy to start our session with you. We'll do a little overview. So during this webinar, you will be introduced to the theoretical model of experiential learning, and reflection is a large part of that. So reflection tools and creative activity ideas will be shared, along with examples of how these activities have been successfully implemented with individuals and groups to help process and debrief learning, with the simple questions of what, so what, and now what. Some examples include feedback and evaluation, leadership, team building, and end-of-life reflection. So for the topic of reflection and social work, as we know, in social work, it is critical for us to reflect on our own social location, especially our own self-awareness, our views of social work, our own knowledge, skills, and the values that we hold. Reflection is a tool that can be applied with individuals, groups, and communities at so many different ages and stages. Reflection can be creatively completed in a variety of settings, and it can be done with any type of budget. It doesn't have to impact the budget. Social work knowledge and experience, it is rooted in experiential learning, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. So reflection is a core aspect of that experiential learning, and it is a key social work skill. So the great thing about what we're going to cover today is that it's something that doesn't take a lot of time and it doesn't take a lot of funds to implement. You can use it again with all ages and stages, and you can really do it where you are with whatever you have accessible to you. So on the topic of experiential learning, David Kolb is considered one of the foremost experts on experiential learning. And while he developed this model in 1984, it still stands today. Kolb said experiential learning occurs when individuals engage in some activity, reflect upon the activity critically, and derive some useful insight from the analysis. They would then incorporate the result through a change in understanding or behavior. Essentially, experiential learning occurs when an individual or a group, as you can see here in this diagram, engages in the experience, the doing. They then review it by reflecting on the experience and analyze the learning that's occurring. Next, they would apply the learning. So when you want to intentionally include a reflective piece in your work, you're going to want to set learning objectives and outcomes. This also involves creating opportunities to list hopes and fears so that people are able to process some of that. Part of that also creates conditions for success of the reflective activity. And it's very important to build in time for reflection. So intentionally including reflection, you want to make sure you build in time for that. So Euler and Giles, as well as Jacobi and some others, cite this reflective model, which is easy to facilitate. It can be used to help reflect from participant, organization, and community perspectives. So here is the key part. First, you ask what, and that really focuses on the descriptive. So you focus on the facts, discuss what happened, what is important, what are the key facts. Next, you would look at the so what, which is the interpretive piece. You would incorporate the experience and reflect on why the pieces are important. You'd connect the experience together. Finally, you would think about the now what, which is an integrative piece, and you think about how to apply your learning. You might consider some what ifs, how you could bring these learnings forward. How will you raise those concerns or build solutions together or individually? And how will you make an impact? So these three key aspects, quite easy to facilitate with folks, again, with all ages and stages. Here are some examples of questions or prompts that you may be able to include when discussing the what. So, for example, what did you do? What did you accomplish? Who did you work with? Who did you network with? What were your areas of growth? What's the best thing that happened? What challenges did you experience? Just a few examples. For the so what, you may use questions or prompts such as, what impact did the experience have on you? For your colleagues, if you're in a group with your colleagues, what do you feel was your main contribution? What have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about social work? What would have made it a better experience? And how could this experience be different? Finally, you might think about the now what. You would think about the now what. And some questions or prompts here could be, what might change as a result of this experience? For you, for people that you will work with. What will you repeat? What would you do differently next time? How will you impact change in your community, workplace, or family after this experience? What responsibility do you have to the community? So this is where some of the more critical reflective pieces come in. So next up, we are going to be talking about some examples, and I'm going to pass it right over to Kim to talk about some examples of reflective tools that can be used.
Okay, so thank you, Nikki. The beauty of reflective tools is we're as diverse as the profession itself, right? I mean, we talk about many points of unity and such diversity and such possibility, right? So it's the same with our reflective tools. So you can use anything from quotes, and what I'm going to do is, because I could really spend 20 minutes talking about each of these, I'm not going to do that. We'll save some time afterwards, for questions and discussion, right? So basically, for something like a quote, after the end of a session, you could say, well, what will you take with you, or what did you learn from this session? And you can write it on that quote and keep it for yourself. And I will say that Nikki Brown is the famous lady for quotes in the School of Social Work. She's always making these inspirational quotes for people, and that people can use to reflect upon their own life and all of those things. But you can use it as a reflective and educational tool, and that's what I really like about that. You can use bookmarks on those quotes, art or photography, reflection balls, as you see here. And this is actually a what, a so what, and a now what ball, actually, that has some of the questions that Nikki mentioned on the ball for the what and for the so what, so helping to establish meaning, and the now what will you do differently, or what will you do with this knowledge going forth? Reflection baskets, you could use a graffiti board or flip charts. That's my old-fashioned way if you were in person. You can use a blog, guided imagery or meditation. Slam dunk, I learned from T.A. Loeffler, one of the great profs that we have here at MUN in our human kinetics school. You can do a photo collage or photo voice, which might be familiar to some of you. Sentence stems, today I will, or today I did, right? Cards and symbols, and we'll actually go in through some of that. So you'll see that we've used some of the symbols here on the right. So Nikki and I just facilitated a session with the master's class, and we actually used some of these some of these symbols to draw out the learning. Okay, and in terms of the some examples of reflective activities, you can use anything from ABCs, right? We all know the alphabet, costs nothing. You can put it up on a computer, you can use pen and paper form, and you can actually use these for helping to draw strengths, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And of course, we're going to go into talk about reflective activities for suicide loss and for end of life, in terms of helping to make meaning and create legacy. So yeah, we can also use it for feedback and all of those types of things.
So here's the ABC example. They're quite an effective tool to help convey qualities or strengths of an individual, and this activity could be completed by an individual that you're working with, by a family, by a group, by classmates. And this is an alphabet that we used for one of our coworkers, Lisa. And so all of these wonderful qualities that she has, we use them sometimes at retirement parties or 25 years of service celebration, which is a great opportunity for team building as well.
Yeah, so some of the ways, for example, that you just to add to what Nikki just said about the alphabet, I mean, you can also use them for like if you were having a staff meeting or a team meeting or team building, and to look at, okay, what are the strengths of each other collectively? Or, what do we need to think about doing going forth as maybe a team, right? So lots of different kind of creative and unique ways you can do this. So, I use it for a lot of different things, and I know Nikki now uses it as well, and we use it for people. So for example, I was at an 80th birthday not too long ago, who was a friend of my dad who had passed a few years ago. And of course she was a teacher. So I said, I'm going to use the alphabet. So it was up in the hall in Cape Royal, and there was about 100 people there. And I had, different words and qualities that were meant to kind of who Teresa was. But then what I did was I invited all of the guests to kind of say, well, A, what kind of qualities would, Teresa have that would speak to A? And they actually really, filled it in. And I know at the end, with so much laughter and fun coming, against all of these qualities, and some of these I didn't even think of. So the beauty of involving others. And, at the end, she said, my gosh, this was such a great way to talk about, myself and for my family to kind of realize, everything that she had done. Because some people talked about qualities, but some people talked about things she did in life as well. So, the sky's the limit when it comes to little tools like this to kind of, add to your toolkit, right? And, to use those kind of acronyms. Okay, so suicide loss. I lost my brother Brendan to suicide, at the age of 24, in 2000. So you would think, my gosh, how can we go from a fun ABCs, to talking about reflective tools? Well, for suicide loss. Well, when it comes to social work, we're all social workers on this line. And so we know that sometimes it's really up to us to ask those difficult questions to people. And when it comes to suicide loss, people don't always they're not even able to express their own feelings. So using reflective tools is really a really good thing to be able to help draw out some of those feelings and around different things around suicide loss. So everything from kind of what happened to what kind of challenges did you face, using some of those questions that Nikki talked about, right, as you were going through the loss, and what did all of these things mean for your family, right, and and all of those things. So one of the these tools here, actually, I'm going to credit Lori Peterson, fellow social worker at the RUA Counseling Center, and actually to acknowledge the RUA Counseling Center, because we did a couple of hope and healing days for suicide loss. So we have used these tools for these particular areas, right? So to help reflect feeling. So for example, people could choose one of these cards to either say how they were feeling, like, you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, all of the, or I feel like my head is in the sand, right? That I can't, get out, or I'm really feeling guilty or overwhelmed, or, I'm feeling like my life is, broke up into little tiny pieces, right? All of what some of the things that people can express after suicide loss. And of course, the beauty of these cards is if something is not there, that people can still share whatever is on their mind. But these are really prompts, really, to really kind of draw out what people are feeling, in a non-intrusive manner, and to let them know, that it kind of makes people feel there may be other people going through some of these things as well, right? When they see some of those. And so these cards, for example, can be used in suicide loss for reflecting feeling. And now, we'll see that for reflecting meaning and legacy. So this is more or less, so some of the, around the so what, right? Helping people kind of create meaning and establish legacy for their loved one. And, and some of these cards might convey, oh my gosh, my loved one was so creative. They were awesome in so many ways. And they were like a gift to us. Or, maybe they liked to paint, or maybe they had ADHD and they were buzzing around and they loved that about their loved one, right? That they were always, or maybe their fingers were into many different pots and pies and those things. Or, maybe they were a very accomplished musician or academic or, sports person, et cetera. And just noticing I put creative there twice. Or I can't blame Nikki for that one because I scanned these ones in. So sorry about that. I was meant to have another one. Or like maybe they were an actor, right? So lots of different ways that can be used to kind of reflect on the strengths and qualities of one's loved one. So one of the things we try to do in suicide loss, because of the painful nature of the death, and because people view the nature of the death so differently than with other deaths, like for example with cancer and those types of things, is that we really want to focus on the life lived and not just the death, right? So it's really important for family and those left behind to kind of focus on the life lived and those wonderful qualities that everybody has, that in that way. And of course, for building hope and fostering healing. So if you remember, we use 3 of those symbols for reflective feeling. So just to show the diversity of some of the tools. So for example, for building hope and fostering healing, we're now shifting from feelings about the death and, what happened with the death and what does this mean for you and your family kind of thing, and looking at the qualities of the loved one, to building hope and fostering healing for yourself. So what are some of the things that you might do, to help foster your own kind of hope and healing? So maybe for some, it might be for art. Maybe for someone is they're trying to pick up those pieces and, maybe they've done well with that today, in that sense. Or, I'm really cautious, but I'm trying to move forward as best as I can. Maybe the globe will symbolize travel. Maybe they've been putting off something because they feel they shouldn't do something because their loved one had passed away, right? And they, or maybe they're trying to fulfill a wish that their loved one, if might have wanted to go somewhere and never got to go, and now they might want to do that for, for their loved one because they're not here. And in reality, they might say, well, they're uncertain, right, about some things going forth. Or, the butterfly, a source of transformation. In this province where, lots of people may believe, there's lots of different cultural signs, and we are, lots of different things that have been handed down through generations of faith, so to speak. Well, when I see a butterfly, I think of my loved one. I feel that they're with me. Or maybe it's that, I'm seeing some change within myself, since my loved one died. And maybe I'm proud of that, or maybe, I'm working on that change, right? Or maybe they want to do an art class, or, write, or do something for themselves to kind of build that hope and foster healing, within themselves. And for rebuilding, right? Like a lot of people, when it comes to suicide loss, sometimes need to give themselves permission to be kind to themselves, to be gentle, to smile, and so these rocks, which were painted by my friend Donna Marie at the Basilica Church that I attend, and she had these left over from, so I asked, could I have them? And she's painting some more for me. So again, very versatile. Didn't cost me a cent. Cost her a little bit of money because she used her own paint and that kind of thing. But again, just versatile, right? So people might choose, for example, a friend to say, what, the friends that I had before my loved one passed away, you know, are different friends now that I have, right? Or maybe they're trying to connect with an old friend, or, you know, my friend is my rock, you know? So again, different ways people can choose these messages to kind of speak about, you know, how they're rebuilding, right? Or, you know, today I'm going to experience joy, even if it's going to be for 5 minutes, right? You know, or to have courage to take a break from my grief today for a little bit, you know? And so again, different tools and different ways they can be used for rebuilding. A little bit about my own experience and my family. My mother passed away in 2022, but she's still a resounding influence in my life. And my mom wrote 5 songs to help her deal with what was going on with my brother's loss, because of course, you know, no mother should ever have to lose their child before them, and should never have to lose them by suicide. It was the most painful loss that, you know, my family could have ever encountered. And but my mom, being the woman of resilience and strength that she was, you know, used you know, her feelings and wrote about them in songs. So you'll see on the little widget on the material sign, there's a song that she wrote called Memories of You, which she wrote about my brother. And actually, you can look up this YouTube link. I'm not going to do that right now, but you can certainly look up that link and see her song and hear her song and her lyrics. And her lyrics are written out in one of the documents that we have there. And of course, you know, she used that for suicide loss, for her own reflection, to help deal with her feelings, but also to inspire hope. Because what we did with that CD, for example, is we raised money for a scholarship that we have in memory of my brother Brendan, who died by suicide. That award, it's called the Brendan Kelly Memorial Award, is given annually to a social work student at Memorial University who is from the Southern Shore, where we're from. And of course, now that scholarship, you know, is going to go on forever, indefinitely, and it's in memory of my brother. And my mother Sheila and my brother Scott get to come and present that award. So it's really, you know, it's what of the what. You know, my mom was using the songwriting to write about her journey. The so what, in the song, she talks about how Brendan, you know, grew up and left home and went to Mon. We were proud of you, our youngest son, for example, right? And talking about the things that he did in life. So in that sense, she was helping to make meaning, the so what of her experience. And the now what, you know, really is what she's doing, what we're doing with that story about the loss, in terms of, you know, we're contributing to social work education, or someone's education, by giving them an award, which is almost $1,000 now. And of course, we're using that experience to restory, you know, using to build on the work of narrative theory, and to restory that loss and reframe how that loss looks for us, you know. And also with regards to songwriting, I wrote a song too. You know, I don't have that one up on YouTube, but it's called Better Place. And it's what I imagine it's like for someone thinking about suicide, and certainly what I've experienced as a person left behind after suicide loss. So, you know, these are just different ways that I reflected on my own loss, and in terms, you know, it helped me make meaning of those things, you know, of Brendan's death, and, you know, what it meant for our family and all of that. And in terms of the now what, you know, we're encouraging people to use these as sort of lyric analysis and different things that you can do. Or, you know, we've also used it at a vigil to remember people who died by suicide as one of the songs that we use. So lots of different ways we're seeing the what, the so what, and the now what. And this is an example in 2018, a Memorial University where I used to work. I'm now retired from that practice area of education. You know, that is the university kind of recognized, the advancement department, that, you know, we were all giving money from this CD and sending $20 over here and there when people were buying their CDs and that. And they were saying, my gosh, that family is working really hard to build that scholarship. And they suggested that it be used as a story, like that we're remembering Brendan, and they call the story, and giving to memorial students, honoring the life of a son and brother. And this talks about this article about the legacy of Brendan, and about reframing how we as a family are reframing suicide loss and helping other people reflect and know that it's okay to create legacy, right? So that's really important. And, my mother was so proud that our story on Brendan and our family was one of the top stories of 2018. Looking back, got the story of the month for April, I believe it was, but certainly it was one of the most viewed stories of 2018. So that's in terms of the now what, in terms of suicide loss. So, really trying to look at, the painful loss of suicide and trying to restore how families will feel about their loved one. And now we're going to switch from suicide loss when people do not get the opportunity to say goodbye to their loved one, right? Most times anyway, we're going to move to end of life, helping people to reflect and share legacy with those who are passing away. So, the next few slides are going to be about my own journey. So, I think because my brother died by suicide, and because we did not have that opportunity to, to speak, to really say goodbye, for Brendan to know what we thought of him, for us to reflect with him about his qualities and all of those things he did in life, and etc. And when my father was diagnosed with cancer, both of my parents had cancer. And when we knew my dad's cancer was terminal, well, then I said, I'm going to use all of my social work knowledge and skills and the wonderful skill of reflection to kind of help my dad see what he meant to people in person. So the next few slides are going to be about that part of the journey. All right, so you can see now what happened was we were from a small town, and when people, in a small town realize that somebody has gotten a terminal illness, they came to say goodbye to my dad. And, as they came into the house, I bought this, scrapbook, and started to look at it to see, I invited people to write messages about my dad, a favorite story, favorite memory, all of those types of things. And so people they wrote memories. And these are some of the excerpts from some of those things that people wrote. So for example, it's so nice to see you again, Bill. You are one of the most, happiest and fun-loving people I had the privilege to meet. I honestly believe that Cape Broyle is a better place to live because Bill Kelly passed through. So my father would have never thought that anyone ever thought that about him. My father was a really humble man and quiet, unlike his daughter, but he, that's kind of how he was. And, I knew myself, my dad had been really an important part of the community and an important part of the parish that we had, and, all kinds of things. And so I knew that Dad never got that opportunity to know what people thought of him. So, this was a really unique way that any of you can use with a family member who's dying. If you're working with a client whose family members are dying, or maybe it's their 80th birthday, or you're wanting to acknowledge a retirement of one of your colleagues, so lots of different ways. While this was used as an end of life tool for my dad, it really is so versatile, and something that, you can really use a bit of pen and paper and, really invite people to make messages. Or it doesn't have to be pen and paper. It can be virtual. You can get people to send in, quotes or testimonials or stories. And I know often we do this for family events. Now, this is no stranger to what a lot of you are doing for your own, but to use it as a social work skill and technique is, I'm encouraging you and hopefully inspiring you, me and Nikki, to use this for your own family, or your own clients, in your own social work practice. So the second excerpt there says, "Most of all, I admire your great faith and what you contributed to the parish. The church doesn't seem the same without you on Saturday evenings. When I was growing up, Jim, Joe, and John Thomas were considered the most humble men in Cape Royal. Bill, you have surely taken their place. You have been an inspiration to young and old." So imagine, when they left, and a lot of people didn't want to share what they were writing. So after they left, I shared them with my father, and he kind of couldn't believe, in a sheepish kind of grin that he had, and couldn't believe that these that were saying that about my dad. And then, of course, another person. And of course, I've tried to protect everyone's anonymity here. You were always known to have the best comic collection in Cape Royal. I learned this, never knew my dad had a comic collection. Thank God when you went to the Air Force, Mrs. Liz, that was his grandmother, would give us your comics to read, and we would bring them back the next day. And Dad never knew about that, or never knew that he was providing joy, even in his absence, to other kids in the community who didn't have any comics, right? And then, like your father, who was known in Cape Royal for his acting, singing, and carrying on, you took his place. You are a legend in Cape Royal for all the good things that you've done, and it was great knowing such a wonderful person as you. You are remarkable for all the things you have done in Cape Royal and the Fairyland Dinner Theatre. So while Dad was a quiet man, he was on the dinner theatre and acted and recited and sang. It is wonderful to be able to say that I know Bill Kelly. May God bless you and your family. So imagine my father learning all of this. But essentially what we did when Dad was dying is, how, all of us gather. It's tradition for most traditions to gather in some kind of celebration of life or some kind of remembrance when people die. Often here in our local area here, we use funeral homes, right? But lots of people do them in pubs, or they do, all kinds of remembrances and celebrations happen in different places. But I really wanted to make sure that something happened that it didn't wait until Dad passed away and everybody shared these stories, that it was so important to share these while my dad was living. So out of all of this, I wrote this book about my dad called The Life and Times of Bill Kelly. And I have it here. I'm not going to, it's just a book from Photo Book Canada. But, we kind of used it as an opportunity to theme, his his younger years, his married years, his time as a dad and as a grandfather, his cancer years and cancer journey, his love of the Detroit Red Wings, his favorite hockey team, and all of those things, his time as an actor, his career years being from the Air Force to Canada Post to and post-retirement, what he did in that. And of course, one of the great things that kind of came, this is an excerpt that came from one of the pages that we did in the book. And what I really found was powerful about this journey for my dad was I learned things about my dad that I never knew. So see that bishop's picture in the middle? I should have said that I'm a Catholic, right? So sometimes that Catholic in me shows through, but we learned, when my dad was dying, his brother came in with this little piece of flower and it was it was laminated and all that. And I said, my gosh, Brian, what's that? He said, oh, he said, part of our relative. He said, he was he was an auxiliary bishop of New York, had his own TV show. His name was Fulton Sheen. And at the time, I thought he was Archbishop of New York, but he was actually an auxiliary archbishop. Anyway, he's now being canonized to be a saint, and he's on stage 2 of that canonization process. And I can't believe my father lived his whole life and my whole life without ever telling me that I was related to somebody famous. Might have been way off in the distance, but at the same time, again, this was something we learned about my dad. So this book is all about the tidbits, that we were able to use. And this page is all about his life as a community. If you see that picture on the right on the bottom, that was the first parish council in Cape Royal, and my dad was part of that inaugural. He was also part of the initial town council thing in Cape Royal. Again, taking through that journey with the family to help them realize what's happening. Again, my dad was involved in the Boy Scouts, and took this group of young men, young boys up to Alberta. It was all of their very first trip, and they came in and talked about how that was instrumental in their life. Was the first time on a plane, the first time away from home, the first time away from her family. My gosh, and that had been so many years ago. I'm sure Dad had forgotten about it and didn't even realize that their families and them would think about that, and the people who said about playing Santa, and how important and what a great Santa he was, in their lives, right? So lots of different things in that. And of course, in terms of, we've been through the what and the so what. We've helped Dad see the meaning, and, us, and in terms of the what, the stories, and in terms of the now what, that we're using Dad's story today as an educational tool. And we certainly, he didn't, when my father passed away, we didn't have the scholarship established for my brother. So, now we use that book. So for example, when people found out in the community that we had a book about Dad, we only printed 20 copies because it was only meant to be a family project. And people said, oh my gosh, I want to read this, and I want to do this. And when the book came back, they knew we had a scholarship about Brendan, and they put money in it. So like sometimes there was $20, and sometimes there was $100, and sometimes, so we put all of that money into my brother's scholarship. So again, trying to reframe, loss and create legacy. And in this case, we were creating legacy both for my father and for my brother. So out of 2 very different types of death, came all of that, reframing. And looking, and my out of reflection, I guess one of the things that I also like is narrative therapy or theory, right? So looking at the story of one's life and looking at all of that. So that certainly reframed, and allowed me vision in terms of, I think, really creating this opportunity for my dad and for my family. And I should tell you that one of the pages that in the book that I didn't scan in, my dad was a leukemia survivor, and so he got to have he got to meet his donor in Calgary many years ago. And so I sent this book to him, and he was saying how he used this book as an opportunity to share with his sons about the connection that he had with this man who he gave bone marrow to, who was a stranger, and also to talk about the life and legacy of this good man in his eyes, and trying to share that with his kids. And he said what a difference even that story made to his family and his children, and so as an example, you wouldn't think of far-reaching effects sometimes that you can have, right? But certainly we realize that through this kind of a project and story.
Thank you, Kim, for sharing so many examples from your work and your personal life and all the beautiful ways they've come together. So we're just going to share some final tips for successful reflection. So, of course, as we've discussed, you can really work with individuals or groups when doing reflection it's really important for you to create and ask open-ended questions. That leaves a lot more space for folks to reflect, think about their thoughts and feelings, and to bring them forward. It's important for participants to take responsibility so that they can reflect upon what things meant for them, and so that it's really resonating with them and aligning with their perspective, their values, their beliefs, and what impact it will have for them. Part of this is to help create a safe environment. So as we talked about, when intentionally creating space for reflection, you want to build in time and space and make sure that, you have adequate time, that you're not feeling rushed, that folks can have that exploration. And that can involve also validating experiences. Kim touched a lot on suicide, loss, and grief, and end-of-life reflection. All of these topics are difficult and challenging, and we can also see how reflection can make it a little bit easier on us and help us move through those stages. So validating, supporting, and acknowledging participants' engagement. Negatives and challenges are to be seen as opportunities. Even though it can be difficult, they can really be, that chance for identifying the transformation or the change. As Kim showed with the cards that she gave the examples for earlier, it can feel as though life is in broken pieces, or people can feel broken. And part of helping to navigate that as social workers is seeing the opportunity for resilience and for rebuilding. Setting boundaries is important for yourself and for the group, especially when we talk about appropriate self-disclosure. If you're working with folks, you want to make sure that those boundaries are set ahead of time as a way to keep everybody safe in the group. Ensuring that there is closure. So especially if it's a heavy topic, as we know, we want to make sure that that process is done gently and carefully. And finally, once again, making sure you have adequate time, because sometimes there are folks in groups who like to share a lot, and you want to make sure you have time for everyone to participate meaningfully.
Oh, there we go. So Nikki, what I'm going to, just before we get to the Q&A, I can't believe we're usually, I know me, I know Nikki, you are so respectful of time, but I'm always over. Can't believe we're ahead of time. So what we'll do is, there is in your content section there's a whole lot of different materials that, that you can access. And one thing I want to draw attention to is there is one there called a reflection acronym. And so what that means is that Nikki just talked about, tips for successful reflection. And what I used to use myself in my own kind of reflective journey, and what always stuck with me, these are kind of Kim's why reflection, why is reflection is important. So I've spelled out the words of reflection, and they each mean something associated with reflection. So that's a takeaway that you can take away, but I'm going to review it now. And so the R, for example, is reflection really helps reflect on the experience. So you can use it for activities, you can use it for team building, you can use it for staff, you can use it for strategic retreat to kind of look at what you've been doing, what's been working, what do you need to change, what kind of opportunities do you have, and going forth, how will you do things differently? Lots of different ways that you can use reflection to talk about all that. And it really helps recognize like some some of the learning that has happened, or some of the growth. So not only learning, but maybe some of the growths, or maybe to recognize some of the challenges that have been happening, or recognizing some of the things that you've been doing really well. So, that's in terms of the R, right? The E is, as Nikki said, from the work of David A. Kolb, the father of experiential learning, who I must share this little this little tidbit of information. So David Kolb, you know how you read theorists and you always wonder, now they were wrote in 84. Now, how old were they? And, so I never knew if David A. Kolb was alive or not alive. So I got the opportunity on an experiential learning conference that I went with T.A. Loeffler to Florida, and I got to meet David A. Kolb. Now, we didn't have fancy phones then. This was in 2008, so I didn't get a picture with them, but I got to meet David A. Kolb, and he's the father of experiential learning. So that E stands for that reflection is a core part of experiential learning and must be included in experiential learning. Whenever you do it, it must reflect, it can't be experiential learning unless there is a reflective element. Right? So, I mean, if you're a social work student, you'll know that when you're doing your field placement, there is a reflective component in terms of, your learning contract and your weekly field meeting with those wonderful field instructors that you have and all of those. The F stands for that reflection is really a way for you to focus discussion. So as Nikki mentioned earlier, building in that reflective component is really important because it does help you focus, what needs to happen, what has to happen, so that there is a way for people to reflect on what is happening. The fears, because there's no H in reflection, I put fears first and then hopes, but certainly, any part of a reflection, you'd usually, kind of ask, what do you hope to get out of this experience? And what are your fears about this experience? So building in that is a core part of reflection. And of course, reflection can be used as feedback. So some of the tools that we talked about earlier, and we may go back to those in a second, we can talk about feedback and how to kind of use them for feedback. And the L is reflection really helps link the learning to the experience. And that's really an important part of reflection, right? Making sure that the learning comes out and that it is part of what you're intentionally trying to draw out as part of the experience. The E, reflection, as we've seen in some of the examples, can be really used to explore strengths, skills, narratives, the story. So for example, if we go back, Nikki, to maybe one of those cards, maybe the reflecting feeling slide. I don't know if we can do that. Okay, so for example, like, that can be used, I mean, in this case, it's about suicide loss, but you can use it for anything. So it could be that if you were using it for, I don't know, something with your team. I'm trying to put, and you're asking them to build a story about what happened, right? So, the pieces of the puzzle maybe are not coming together for me. I'm really upset about what happened. I'm uncertain about the future of this project, for example, and I think we need to do a take 2 or a take 3, on what happened. So lots of different ways that you can be using these. So again, for that E, to explore the narratives, explore potential solutions, and the path forward. The C, is to challenge maybe, it can be used to challenge attitudes. For example, I used to use it with service learning. So I created a program called Make Midterm Matter at the university that allowed students to go out into the community. And for example, we used to take 100 students, 150 students out into long-term care facilities. So we would always build in a hopes and fears before we went, and build in a little bit of psychoeducational piece about, maybe the what they're going to experience in the home. We'd always have, a person from the home representing so that they could prepare students in advance for some of the things that they'd be seeing during, because it's only a one-day experience. And then, of course, we'd be talking about, all of the different things. Maybe students had attitudes about maybe working with older people that they didn't know. And then, they really challenged those attitudes when they were out there, because it may not at all been what they thought it was going to be. And so, of course, in terms of C, is also for that challenging of self-discovery. And reflection is a great way to make sense of connections. So who are your connections? What kind of connections do you have, et cetera. And the T, reflection, well, it's part of the theory of experiential learning, as we talked about. And of course, I was trying to make all of these letters work at the time, but this was how I used to teach people how to help them learn about reflection. And of course, the T, the team, it's very applicable for both individual and teamwork. And Nikki talked about that earlier. Intentional component, again, Nikki mentioned that, and it can, to build in that intentional component, and that reflection can be both informal or formal. Right? So different ways you can use it. And then also, whenever you're planning an event or an experience that when you're building, setting those objectives and outcomes, then reflection is going to be part of that. And then, of course, the N for, using it as part of the assessing of needs, and also, kind of looking at what did you meet those needs and goals, so you can use it on both ends. So just wanted to draw the attention to that, because that's a quick and easy acronym. If you forget everything else we told you today, except for the what, the so what, and the now what, then, this reflection acronym can really be like a really good tool in your toolkit to kind of, to either help learn more about reflection yourself, or to kind of really feel, that reflection is, to build it in, and what kind of things you need to do. All right. So I'm wondering, Nikki, do you have anything like I've been talking a lot, so I want to put it back to you.
Nope, nothing to add. That's great.
All right. So I wonder, can we go back? We do have a couple of questions, I believe, that were in the chat. And one was, how do you use tools in remote practice, such as cards or rocks? Okay, so that's excellent. So Cynthia, the slides that we showed you about reflecting feeling, and those slides and the rocks, they actually have been used in a virtual setting. So you just put the whatever images you want on the screen, and then you get them to kind of choose those images. So they can be used in person, or can be used virtually. And we've used them. I know when Lori and I did the Hope and Healing Day for Suicide Loss with Rua, that we used some of those same they're the ones that I chose for today, but we might have used different ones. But regardless of which ones you use, you can just scan in the images, or like crop the images from, what are some of those, I don't know, you can get them from the internet, free graphics. You can just take them from those two. You don't have to have fancy cards like I do. You can just use them, take images or use pictures yourselves, or postcards, lots of different ways that you can actually, you can do that. I hope that answers your question, Cynthia.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Kim and Nikki, for this excellent presentation. We do have lots of time for questions, so keep your questions coming in. And while we give people an opportunity to ask some more questions, just another couple questions that have come up, Kim and Nikki, and just gonna maybe address this one to you, Nikki. How do you approach a group setting when one participant is reluctant to share and reflect if you're using reflection tools?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I acknowledged earlier that sometimes folks can share a lot in group, but there are also sometimes folks who don't feel like sharing. So one of the great group facilitation skills we can all practice is, I'd love to hear from someone who hasn't had a chance to share yet, or you can acknowledge that there may be, because it could be a heavy topic, there could be a reason why someone may prefer to internally reflect, take that home with them. You can always offer some tools or some takeaway sheets for people to use afterward, especially if they're feeling, maybe it's not the right time for them.
Mhm. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Kim, I'll ask you the next question that's come in. What is the most important reflection experience that you have facilitated?
Okay. How about instead of, I facilitated many important ones, but how about I share a unique experience that I've done. So one of the things, so for example, I was part of a group here at MUN at Memorial University that we hosted an international conference on I don't remember. I guess it wasn't an experiential learning, but it was something about career development, or was when I worked for there. And so we had people, like any conference, you take them, you do all your workshops and your presentations and your keynotes and all of that. And, we were trying to build in some cultural parts here as well. So, we were taking, the people, and they were from all over North America. I believe we did have a few from outside, but mostly from the States and from other places in Canada. And they asked me, would I facilitate a reflection session down in a pub downtown? I said, oh my goodness, never done that. How is this ever going to work? So, and they said, well, it was because of time, right? So because, they didn't have time, they were trying to jam pack everything in like most conferences. And so what they wanted to do was, we were taking the group to, and I think there was about 100 of them, taking them down, and they booked a private area in a pub, and they had like indigenous drummers, and they had local entertainment. And so what I did was I used reflection baskets. So I went to the dollar store and I bought, put baskets on every table, and I had the questions done up. So for what did you learn from this conference? Who did you meet? All of the different what questions that I felt might be able to be used with this group. And then I did the so what to help them, what will this learning mean for you and your work? And, how will you take it forward? And, after this conference, I like sentence stems and got them to write them in. So had the same questions put on every table, and I had different baskets, one for the what, one for the so what, and one for the now what. And then so I would get up, I had a microphone, and I would say, okay, so take out now your what questions and then discuss them as a group, right? And then so then when we had them come back to share, we got one group to do, the what, and then we went to the so what and the now what, and I used different questions for each group. And they thought it was such a unique way to kind of do reflection, and no one ever kind of would have thought that, imagine doing reflection in a pub, right? But, and so then what we did was, from a feedback perspective, we had a recorder. And so we asked somebody to kind of record all the exam, and then we use that as kind of qualitative feedback for what people thought of the conference. So in addition to the survey piece that they all would have filled out individually, we also got some kind of group, and without names or without, anonymously. And the other thing I did was I did intentionally mix up the groups. Like I had different colors for each one. And I actually used a card deck so that everyone with a spade, sat at one table, and the number, so broke them up into use cards uniquely to kind of break them up. I'll also share a second unique experience I had with reflection. And we were part of a habitat build a number of years ago at Memorial. And so we had, we used to bring the carpenters, electricians, and plumbers, and faculty, staff, chaplains, all out on the bus in the morning. And we do, because of the demands of the building, on site, we would do our reflection on the bus coming back. And I remember like even, here we are, we had from PhDs to our plumbers, right, at the university on the bus. And of course that, we said, what did the bill mean? I remember one of the most profound kind of reflective elements about the bill came from one of the carpenters at the time. And he said, when I've gone home now after the bill, he said, I talk with my children about, how important it is for a family to have a house, and that we're so lucky to have a house, and all of that. And he said, I never would have thought, and he said, I'd never really talked much about work with my children, but he said, this was really an experience, where we really felt like we were an important part of this bill. build and as important as anyone, right? And everyone was equally important on this build. And, you know, talking about citizenship and civic responsibility and all of those things. So, you know, even on a bus, you know, you can do reflection. Again, didn't cost any money. We didn't get to have a recorder or anything on that one, or have, you know, like anyone write down the stuff. But, you know, it was a really important tool, right? And another way that you can do reflection to help people realize the what happened, you know, so what, you know, this family build, and now what, that, you know, teaching children about civic responsibility and about service to humanity. And you don't have to be a social worker to do that, you know, in that sense.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kim. We have a comment that's come in. I'm going to roll it into another question as well. So someone is just saying that thanks. This is going to be very helpful for a follow-up meeting they're doing and facilitating a church vision session. And they developed the plan last year, and now they're doing a review. So this information that you both have presented will be very helpful in that follow-up meeting. So I guess the question is, how, from both of your perspectives, how can these tools and activities be used for leadership purposes or for garnering, you know, feedback from those who are trying to engage?
I think from a leadership perspective, a lot of the time, especially with the competing demands for folks in management and folks on the front line, there can be a disconnect between what frontline workers are seeing and what management is seeing. So taking time to intentionally use reflection, the what, the so what, and the now what can really help guide your work. And as a leader, it's important to have a vision for what that's going to look like, and that aligns with the folks who are experiencing maybe completely different realities than what you're seeing. So I think it's useful there for sure.
Kim?
Yep. And so I would just, I agree with everything Nikki said, absolutely. And I guess for leadership, I mean, there's a couple of different ways you can use it. So especially like in a church. So I'm trying to thinking, so it's a vision session. So you're probably trying to look at, okay, where is our church going, or, you know, or our community, right? Or what does this mean for our community? So you could kind of use, you could go in, there's a number of different things you can do at the session itself. So one would be, you could have quotes, for example. They could pick a quote that kind of speaks to, you know, maybe you get people in advance. Here's something you could do: get people in advance to kind of look at, okay, what have we accomplished in the last year, or what kind of quote maybe speaks to. So they could either write about what are some of the things that have been working, and they could anonymously put those, you know, on a piece of paper or whatever. And, you know, you could also use quotes or postcards to say, you know, well, what image or testimonial kind of speaks to what we've been doing. And then you could do some individual work around, you know, what are their individual visions, and kind of bring them together as a collective, right? So could do that. And you could also do some team building with your group, and kind of make the questions applicable to the particular leadership session, because I'm thinking it's a vision session, but it's also it's a vision session for your leaders. Is that correct? I'm thinking, so it's both, right? Because you're trying to do a vision, create a vision, but you're also trying to acknowledge the leadership. So you could look at leadership skills. So you could even take that alphabet that we had, and you could get them to look at, well, what are, you know, some individual qualities and skills that we have as leaders, you know, and then, you know, what are we missing, right? So how do we kind of combine our collective leadership skills or strengths, and, you know, and we bring in others, and we maybe recruit others if they don't meet the needs of our team, right? So, I mean, most likely a lot of people there are volunteers, as most churches and most groups of any kind, activities that would never last without volunteers. So I don't know, I hope that's helpful. Like, you know, Nikki and I use balls. For example, we have team building balls. So, you know, what's your favorite lunch? Where do you like to travel? You know, all kinds of different balls that you can use for that for in the beginning. But then the reflection balls, like I've seen Nikki, for example. Nikki, do you want to talk about what you do at orientation and what you put on the ball that you use?
I think I can actually grab it quickly because it's here on my shelf. 1 second.
And I'll do the same well, actually, no, I'll wait till you get back. But I have a number of balls. Like, so I have a skills and strengths ball. I have a conflict resolution ball. I have a number of different team building balls. And you sometimes you wouldn't think, that things might work with a particular group, but never have that assumption because, people of all ages and stages enjoy a bit of fun, but also a bit of can be mixed in with serious visioning.
Yeah, so here's the ball we use at the BSW orientation. Some questions are, what are you good at? Which community do you call home? What was your favorite subject in high school? Would you go to space if you could? So there are some really creative ideas, and a lot of the times it gives folks an opportunity to connect because there could be people from different communities that have similarities that they didn't know before.
Yeah, lots of different things. And this is a team build, or this is like an icebreaker ball, but it also can be used as team building. So valuable traits in a coworker. 2 tools you can't live without in our parish, for example, in the church, right? Lots of different ways. 2 practical skills. What are the challenges that we face going forth, etc. And this is a skills and strengths ball that has A to Z with all the different skills and strengths, but you can just make up your own, right? For V, for example, what valuable members of our teams are, who do we appreciate, etc., etc.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Another question that has come in is, do you see a role for meditative practice in reflection? So, for example, do you see a role for mindfulness meditation?
Absolutely.
I see there in the group or in the chat that the person kind of referenced DBT there. And I think reflection can be used in any of those skills. So if you're looking at, interpersonal effectiveness, there's a lot of room there for reflection. And the same with mindfulness, what and so what and now what will you do when you've practiced and acquired that skill?
Excellent. I think the beauty of like all the tools that we have as social workers is that there's so many that we can draw upon, right? To kind of, make connections and for all of those, for everything like that. I remember using guided imagery. I have been a part of that a couple of times to kind of reflect on feelings and to kind of get the person into, speaking to their younger self, about different things. So I have participated in some of those and they've been quite effective as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. That's all the questions that we've had come in. Nikki and Kim, I don't know if you had any other thoughts or information that you wanted to get out there today.
I guess for me, like one of the things that I'd like to say is like I learned about reflection from Sister Lois Green. Like she used to have us gather as university students and we'd watch a movie. Beaches, or we'd watch a movie, whatever it was. And, she'd really get us thinking about reflection and how, to kind of reflect, what was going on in that to life and then what does this mean, right? What is our responsibility as citizens? So I learned a lot about, all of those things from her. So just want to acknowledge that and T.A. Loeffler as well for me, who really taught me a lot about reflection. And she's considered an expert in reflection at Memorial University. And she's our mountain climber and motivational speaker and all that. So just want to acknowledge her for me because really reflection has been a tool that I've drew upon for a long time. And I want to say that I had the privilege of several years ago of driving with Richard Ramsey, and Richard is one of the ASSIST founders, so Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training at a Living Work. So they had 4 founders. One was a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a social worker, and I can't remember the other person, but Richard was the social worker, and I drove him for a couple of hours. Great, one of the best 2 hours I've ever had in my life of driving with that man. And he talked about how, other professions especially have different tools. So for a doctor, you might see a white coat, or you might see a nurse with a blood pressure cuff, or you might see, but he said, social workers, the greatest tool we have, as not always visible, is ourselves, because it's really up to us to ask those difficult questions, right? When our clients are so vulnerable that they're unable to give information. So it's really important that we use whatever tools that we feel will be effective in our practice, whether they be tools that will help evoke, and stimulate, kind of, invite conversation about feelings and things, or whether it's just that you're using yourself as the greatest tool, right? So I always say that it's really important that we establish connections and develop relationships to learn as much, so that collectively we can use all of the tools of our fellow social workers and the non-social workers that we work with to help make a difference in the lives of people.
And I just like to thank everyone for tuning in today. I know March, we were just talking at the beginning before we went live that March has flown. So however you spent your busy social work month, I hope that you're able to find some time to rest. And I want to also thank Kim for collaborating, the opportunity to collaborate with her on this. And as you can see, she's put so much work into, trying to better folks' lives and communities, and also wherever she has been in her work. So thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Nikki. It's been a real pleasure to work with you, and I'm happy to be part of the mentoring and sharing of information about reflection. I will say that in the class of 2015, if one of the slides that we showed, there was actually a little reflection rock in the beginning, and I was working with those students that time, because now, Nikki, it's your role to help students, orient social work students in the school, but at that time it was me, and I was doing so much reflection with them over the summer and building in so many opportunities for orientation when it came around, that they gave rocks to every student coming in, of words that reflected different social work practice. So if anyone is out there, the class of 2015, I do remember, still have that rock, and they gave me a rock that was called Reflect. So they recognized the Reflect, and in career development, I was known as the Queen of Reflection. So just to tell you that, because I was always using reflection, right? And sometimes it's that forgotten skill, or sometimes it's so innate in us that we do it and we don't even realize we're doing it sometimes, right? So thank you, Annette, and thank you, Nikki. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and happy Social Work Month. Forgot to say, and because I celebrate March with an Irish heritage, I will say, wherever you go or whatever you do, may pride in the profession be always with you. Always be proud to identify yourself as a social worker, and to always own that. So my name is Kim Kelly, and I'm a proud registered social worker. Thank you.
Oh, excellent quote, Kim. So I just want to, thank Kim and Nikki for this excellent webinar today, and for sharing your knowledge and experience and expertise on this topic. It is truly, truly appreciated. And everyone who joined today, I'm sure, regardless of your area of practice, this webinar gave you some new knowledge, new skills to incorporate reflection and creative expression into your practice. So thank you again. The PDF.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second?
Yeah.
Since we have a little bit of time, I wonder, can we just ask in the chat quickly, what's one takeaway, one thing you might have learned, a word maybe to capture your learning today? Let's put this reflection in practice just for a second. See if you want to share a line or a word. We won't have time to review it, but just to kind of see what your thoughts are about your learning today. Sorry, Annette. Just
No,
we had a couple of minutes.
as people are typing in the group chat, just let people know that the PDF of Kim and Nikki's PowerPoint slides are in the resource section on the webinar platform, as are the resources that Nikki and Kim talked about throughout the presentation. So you can hop on over to the resource section and get those resources as well. RSWs from Newfoundland Labrador who are joining in today may claim 1.5 CPE credit hours for attending the webinar, and social workers tuning in from across Canada can check their CPE requirements in the jurisdictions in which they're registered. So just wanted to make a note of that. And some of the comments are coming in through the Q&A widget. You can certainly still share them in the chat box there as well. Kim and Nikki, if you want to have a review of that. People talking about reflection being powerful, around growth. So you can just kind of have a look there. If there's pieces that you both want to pull out, Nikki and Kim.
It's great to see all of those things coming in. One of the things I know that Nikki uploaded to as one of the content there is you can, there's a little reflective practice, a little activity for yourself to do about your own reflection as a social worker and what that means. So something kind of you can take away, maybe kind of reflect on for yourself, and just to do that as well. It was great to see some of those comments coming in.
This is a really great comment. I think a better word from today is begin. Begin reflective practice. Reflective practice can take many forms, and just start somewhere. That's a great reflection.
That's excellent. Excellent. The importance of connection and creativity and building community, healing, and fulfillment. So great. Excellent. So thank you all for sharing all of that.
Yes.
Mindful practice, been a good reminder to stay grounded in practice and remember our social work roots. Absolutely. Lots. The greatest tool social workers have is ourselves, and that is true.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm seeing some different comments about using it with their own family. So that's great. And to help with, we are living in this province as well with an aging population, and certainly is a great way. There is a quote, or I really believe that everyone should be remembered, right? That no matter what they did in life, no matter what happened, regardless of how they die, everyone should be remembered. I remember Lorraine Hedke is a great narrative theorist, narrative therapy person, I guess. She says, especially with suicide loss should be restored so that, it's remembering a life lived as an example. After a movie, we all do it. That's excellent. So you do a lot of reflection after a movie. Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
We look forward to reading all these after.
Yes. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today, and thank you so much, Kim and Nikki, for this really great session in week 4 of Social Work Month. So again, everyone, happy Social Work Month, and as a reminder to fill in the survey that's going to appear on your screen. And again, feedback is always so much appreciated, but also your chance to win some great CASW swag. So fill out those surveys. So just on that note, just to say thanks again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day and happy Social Work Month. Kim and Nikki, do you have a final goodbye?
No, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.